now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
What's going on, RBLR Nation? You're here tuning in to the Rays version of our podcast. I'm your host, Zach Lane. I want to give a huge shout out to my co-host, Mr. Ben. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Zach?
Oh, fantastic. Today we have a very special guest on the show with the Raise Your Voice podcast on D-Rays Bay, Mr. Brett Rutherford. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing all right. You know, it's been a tough off season for us podcasters. I think in terms of your guys' baseball show, not a whole lot of news except for what was that, Chris Mazza re-upping with the Rays. So I'll take any crumb of news I can get to help get me through this off season.
At this point, anything is exciting.
Yeah, podcasters are like the most mistreated people. We don't get enough we don't have enough to work with. It's hard being a podcaster, but
no one understands.
We don't do it for the glory. Yeah, nobody understands, but it's nice to have another podcaster on here who knows how we feel. So,
and so actually, Ben, that was a great little leeway into the first question, because today, if you don't mind, Mr. Brett, the show is going to be basically us just asking you questions and kind of seeing your point of view. They've heard our point of view a whole bunch, so if you're down with it, we'll just get to asking questions for you, sir.
Yeah, go ahead and shoot. Let's go. All
right, so right off the rip, what kind of made you get into podcasting and being a sports writer?
Well, I grew up in the Tampa Bay area. Dad started taking me to games when I was real little. He was convinced to not let me be a fan of the team that he grew up rooting for, which was the Kansas City Royals. I'm named after George Brett. But he wanted me to be a fan of the local team, because so often, we'd seen, people move down from New York and they'd raise their kids as Yankees fans or Mets fans. I'd move down from New England and they'd be Red Sox fans. He wanted me to be able to go see my favorite team in person on a regular basis. So started taking me to what was then Devil Rays games. And then the idea for the podcast is something I guess I had kicked around for a while, but it really didn't come to fruition until I went away for college. And there were less people in Tallahassee that watched the Rays on a consistent basis, or I guess I should say less people on Florida State's campus. The team has probably a pretty big fan base in Tallahassee because they're on TV here. So I had nobody to talk to about the Rays. So I thought I'd just talk to the internet about the Rays. And then ultimately joined up with D-Rays Bay, which has been a great opportunity. They've got so many great writers at D-Rays Bay. And so bringing them on as guests, I always like to say, I bring on people that are way smarter than I am, that make the show sound way better than it used to before I had access to all those guests. And it's been really fun, and kind of continuing to grow listenership and engage in this Rays internet community, which, as you guys know, can be a lot of fun, but can also be very crazy at times.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, so Ben knows a little bit about that, I think.
I've seen a little bit of it all, but it's I love this fan base. It's awesome, and I really like what you said about how your dad made you become a Rays fan instead of a Royals fan. I think we need a little bit more of a parenting like that in the Tampa Bay area. We need more fans from a grassroots effort of raising children.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. I know we're going to get into probably some stadium talk later, right? But the idea that all of my friends, if they're, because Florida for such a long time has been a transplant state, specifically the Tampa Bay area, they were rooting for who their parents were fans of. And my dad is a Rays fan too. He doesn't consider himself a Royals fan anymore. He wanted to be able to support the local team and go to games. He's lived in Tampa for 30 years now. But it was something I wanted to do too. And for a while, those first few years when I was growing up, for context, I was born in '99. So for those first years that I actually have memories of, the team sucks. And, it didn't matter to me as long as I got to watch, Casey Fossum and Ty Wigginton and some of those other players from those terrible, terrible teams.
Yeah, see, so that kind of resonates with me a little bit, because I was born in '95, but my dad was, you nailed it right on the head. My dad was born in New England, so he was kind of the opposite of your dad. He's like, no, you're a Rays fan, or you're a Red Sox fan and a Patriots fan, and this is what we root for. Felt like I kind of broke his heart a little bit when I told him I was a Tampa fan when I was finally old enough to realize what I liked.
You found the right side though. You're going to land on the right side of history. My mom's from Wisconsin, and so for a while I was raised a Packers fan, and it broke my dad's heart that I wasn't going to be a Bucs fan. I a few years ago, way before Brady or anything, I came back, and I'll still root for the Packers occasionally, but I became a Bucs fan again, and I think he was thinking about disowning me for a few years, but I'm back in his good graces.
What was your favorite moment from the 2021 MLB season?
My personal favorite, it's got to be a moment I was in attendance for, and I only went to 3 games, I think, this season, and each one of them, something crazy happened. You had the first game I went to was the Wander Franco's debut,
Nice.
because I live in Tallahassee now, so can't always make it down. So got to see Wander's home run, and that was great. And then the next game I went to, we played the Twins, and it was the game where there were like 7 home runs hit. It was just a crazy amount of home runs. And then the last game I went to was ALDS Game 1. And my favorite moment from that had to be Randy Arozarena stealing home. It's something I had never seen before. And real quick, I'll see very briefly. It was to my right, 2 seats down was my best friend. Next to him to my immediate right was my dad. And then on the left of me was this random old guy, probably like in his late 60s or 70s. And none of us had ever seen a steal of home live and in person, let alone a steal of home in a playoff game. And in that moment, when he finally took off, we all acted like little children in our seats, just going absolutely crazy, even this old man. And that was, for me, just like way cooler than any moment. And it kind of reminded me that, like, no matter how old I'll get, like, I'll always go to a baseball game and there'll be something I haven't seen and a chance to see something incredible like that. So Randy Arozarena stealing home, in terms of like making me feel like a kid again, was definitely my favorite moment of this past season.
Yeah, that was crazy. I wasn't there for that, but watching that on TV, and like it was, you could feel the energy through the TV. So I can't even imagine how it felt to actually be there. That's pretty cool. That was pretty special.
Yeah, it was the loudest pop of the night too. Like, you think the game was already 5-1 at that point. I think that made it 6-1. So it's not like it was like a big situation. I mean, obviously it's a playoff game, but there were other like moments, like a Arozarena's home run, Nelson Cruz's home run, Wander Franco hit a big double. But that was just something that we saw Manuel Margot try it in the World Series, and I said last year on a D-Rays Bay podcast that was just the ballsiest move ever, and I loved every second of it, even though he was thrown out. To see Arozarena pull it off in a playoff game, yeah, there was not a better moment from that game.
Who do you think is going to be the next one to steal home in a playoff game for the Rays?
I mean, why would it not be Randy again? Who else has the confidence besides Margot and Randy?
Yeah.
Like, we talk about like Kevin Kiermaier and his confidence that might be arrogance at times throughout the season. Does he have the fortitude to try to steal home in a playoff game? I don't think so. Like, I don't think there are many players that have the ability to steal home as well as like the guts to do it at that moment. And so I think it's got to be Randy again.
Yeah, that would make sense. I could see that.
That would be my answer to that question as well, without a doubt. And I think you nailed it right on the head. I don't think Kiermaier has the fortitude to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
On the flip side of that, what was your least favorite moment from the most recent season here?
There's one moment, obviously, like Game 3 of the ALDS, the way that ended was just heart-wrenching. But I'll go away from that. I'll go back into the regular season and all the sticky stuff talk. I just think that whole period during the season left a real sour taste in my mouth. You have Tyler Glasnow get hurt, which was just devastating. And then he comes out and has the press conference, and he's talking about how he's blaming Major League Baseball. And you've got some groups of fans on Twitter talking about how, oh, well, he was cheating. Why should I feel sympathetic? That whole thing, like even like the dunking on Garrett Cole for his terrible press conference. I might have played a part in that, but still, it was just like, okay, we know these guys have been doing this. Do we really care? I don't think so, or at least some of us don't. Let's just move on. And you could tell that it was like the first shot across the bow in what is going to be this end up being a work stoppage that we're experiencing now. And it just kind of put a damper, like right in the middle of the season, where things are really getting heated up. We were playing the White Sox in that big series. Then that happens, and Glasnow gets hurt, and yeah, it sucked.
Just the whole, like you said, like the energy from that was, it was pretty much all over baseball. It wasn't just the Rays who were feeling it, but yeah, it was not a fun time for baseball, and it's definitely left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths after that.
And also, just kind of to go along with that, sort of a side question: Do you think that more people cared about the sticky stuff as opposed to who didn't care about it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody, like, yeah, there's going to be a group of people that watch, but I don't think people that follow baseball that closely, people that are, will watch 5 games a week or more, I don't think they really cared. Maybe there was some group that, didn't like the way the game was headed in terms of this, like, 3 true outcomes thing. And they think that less strikeouts, will put more balls in play, whatever. Me personally, if they're going to do it, if they're going to not change the rules, because this rule was always in place, but decide to enforce the rules the same way they did with steroids a while back, do it in the off season. Let the pitchers know. Let them go through spring training and getting ramped up, knowing what the rules are going to be. And that was really what Glasnow said. Like, I don't care if that's going to be the rule. If we're going to start enforcing that rule, just let everybody know, because we're all doing it, and some of us are going to get hurt. And I think that was the biggest thing. If you're going to change the way the game is played, let the players know, not in the middle of the season, but in the off season.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like a pretty, it's not like the most groundbreaking thing in the world to be more communicative with the players, but you'd think, what is baseball, like a multi-billion, the MLB is like a multi-billion-dollar organization, and they didn't have the foresight to be like, hey, maybe we should talk to the players about this. They're just like, yeah, we're going to stop it right now and then deal with the fallout later. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it's I think they have the foresight. I think they chose not to. I think this was a labor negotiating tactic that they did intentionally. And I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and complain about Rob Manfred on Twitter 24/7. Sure, he's definitely, we should all criticize him for things he does wrong, and he's done quite a bit wrong. I'm not going to be like, oh, Rob Manfred sucks, fire Manfred, all day on Twitter. But come on, that was ridiculous. It was something that everybody knew was going on for years now, and to step in the middle of the season and try to shut that down was ridiculous and intentional.
Yeah, it seemed almost
That's a good point.
It seemed almost like a look what I can do move. I run the show.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so and then our next question, kind of off topic of least favorite moments, but who is your favorite current Rays player?
Well, I bounce around, so I like to at the beginning of the season or some point in the first month of the season try to designate who my favorite player will be that year. For 2018 and 2019, it was Yandy Diaz, or for I guess 2019 when he came in. Yandy Diaz took up that mantle. The lefty, or not the lefty masher that draws a ton of walks, sprays the ball, has these giant muscles, but doesn't really hit for power. And then I transferred that going into this season, 2021, to Willy Adames. And then obviously he was traded. So I hadn't really decided, but I think because I'm almost certain he's going to take a full-time big league role, at least at the start of the year. He's a Florida State grad. I'm a Florida State grad. I'm going to go with Taylor Walls. I just love the defense he plays. I'm very interested to see where they play him. Is he just going to be a utility guy, play some second, play some third? Because it's pretty insane that you've got somebody who is already a top 10, maybe top 5 defensive shortstop in baseball, in Taylor Walls. We saw that last year. Not playing him at shortstop, obviously we know the reasons why, but will that defense be as valuable at third or at second? I think it's yet to be seen. I think once he gets more consistent at bats in the big leagues, the bat will start to come around. I don't think he's going to be a great big league hitter, but Taylor Walls, I'm going to go ahead and plant my flag in the Taylor Walls camp. And yeah, I'll say my former Seminole Taylor Walls will be my favorite player this year.
I like that.
Nice. That's a good choice. Yeah. Next question here we got is a player that you think overperformed this season. So like we could kind of see like based on like batting average on balls in play and stuff like who might have overperformed, but who was probably, our biggest overperformer, would you say?
I mean, I'm going to go with a guy that actually ran a pretty low BABIP, I'm pretty sure. Let me pull it up on Fangraphs, but I'm going to go with Austin Meadows. I've never been a big Meadows guy. But yeah, he was only running like a 249 BABIP, but he only had a 315 on base percentage. That WRC plus was sitting at 113. He knocked 27 home runs, had 106 RBI. Like, yeah, he had a good season. In the defense, I'll give him credit before I, explain why I think he overperformed. The defense I thought was a lot better. Like in 2020, he came back from COVID. He looked like he had gained some weight, and I was like closing my eyes every time that he had to play the field. Then this year in July, we acquired Nelson Cruz, and I'm like, uh-oh, what does that mean for Austin Meadows? But I'll be honest, I thought he did okay. Like, he was probably still a below-average defensive outfielder, but I didn't feel like he was a liability out there, and the Rays did a lot of work to try to cover that up, limit his exposure out there. Like, later in the season, they were able to, when you got Manuel Margot and Brett Phillips on the bench, deploy those guys as defensive substitutions. The best example of that was like that Sunday night game against the Red Sox. You end up bringing both of those guys in as subs, and you have a Margot, KK Phillips outfield that got all three outs in the ninth inning against on that Sunday night game against the Red Sox. So Meadows, I've just never been a big fan of his. I just think he's a very one-dimensional player. I thought we should have traded him after 2019 after he had that great season. He had a terrible 2020. It was very shortened for him. In 2021, he started to get back on track again. But you still look at those numbers, and it's like, can a guy that only gets on base, he did draw a lot of walks this year, but a 315 on base percentage, is that somebody who can count on again in 2022? I don't know, maybe they move him to first base, but also you brought G-Man Choi back, which I wasn't expecting. So you don't really need to move him to first base. Maybe he can slide back in as the DH with Cruz gone, if he is indeed gone. But I don't know. Like, can you expect 100 RBI out of that guy every season? With the numbers he puts up, probably not.
No, that's a fair assessment. And it would be interesting to see him possibly move to first base. But, G-Bon is still here. He's still on the roster. So I think spring training is going to be interesting if and when we get around to that with this lockout. So, yeah, that sounds
well,
pretty
real
good
quick, were you guys shocked that Troy is back? Because I thought he was gone for sure.
I know. Me personally, I was on the same line of thought that you're on. I thought that he was done as a Ray.
Yeah,
well,
he just
I'd heard
isn't.
That the team was a little upset with. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was going to say he isn't. The same. Energy clubhouse guy that he was before. I mean, he's still Ji-Man Choi. Like, he's still probably a great guy to have around, but I don't think he's as valuable as he was 2 seasons ago. So I was a little surprised.
We have a writer at D-Rays Bay. His name is Homan Lee, and he's from Korea. He lives in Korea, and so he'll sometimes see a lot of the Korean media where they'll interview guys like Ji-Man Choi and pass that information on to a lot of us. And Ji-Man Choi apparently has some terrible, his legs are always going to be hurt. Like, a doctor said that he has the legs of a 70-year-old man. And so he's always going to spend some time on the IL with some leg injuries. You've seen him go all out in the postseason in 2020, making those plays. And then he has 3 trips to the IL in 2021. I don't know. I heard the Rays were a little upset with the way he showed up to camp last year. He said that the lockdown in Korea didn't allow him to get his normal workouts in. I don't know what happened there, but he was also upset with the number the Rays put out when they were trying to negotiate his contract last year, and that's why I ended up going to arbitration, which G-Man won. But this year they were able to agree to a number, which I was shocked by. I'm glad to have him back. I love G-Man. I think he's still a valuable player. But, yeah, I'm mostly just shocked. I was already getting ready to bang the drum for Brandon Lau to move to first base. But I guess this year he'll be back at second.
Oh, Brandon Lau at first base. That's interesting. I haven't even really thought about that.
Anytime I bring it up on there's that one of those Rays discords, I always get laughed out of the room because they say he's too short. But I don't really care.
We've definitely talked about it at one point, but just thinking about it still. And I think that was one of the strikes that we had on him as well, was that he was just very short for a first baseman.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'll throw
just tell everybody to throw it lower.
Yeah, exactly.
Just don't throw it so high. Here. Perfect.
I mean, Joey Wendell probably had the least accurate arm of any Rays infielder. I love the guy. He made a ton of great plays. But I don't think G-Man truly liked Joey Wendell. Joey Wendell was making him stretch left and right. He would not make a good throw ever. You don't have to worry about him. So throw Brandon out at first base. It'll be fun.
I've seen crazier things happen in Tampa, so...
Yeah.
All right, so the next question is kind of piggybacking off of overperforming. Who is someone that you think will bounce back or return from an injury to improve their season from this year to 2022?
I think one of my answers would have been Yanni Chirinos, but we know he suffered a setback. I don't really know what his status is going to be. With that setback, I've gone back to I have no expectations for Yanni Chirinos this year. But the one guy I think, because he's been an above-average big league pitcher his entire career, is Ryan Yarbrough. Last year, the ERA ballooned a little bit, got up to 5.11. But the rest of his numbers were pretty uniform with what he had done throughout his career. The strikeouts were down a little bit, but not by much if you look at his strikeout rate. The walks actually decreased. And he still had he had a 4.45 FIP, a 4.59 xFIP in 150 innings. How many guys, was he the only one to eclipse 150 innings on that staff last year? Maybe McClanahan did too. That 5.11 ERA, it was a little unfair to Yarbrough last year. I'm not expecting him to go back to what he did in that rookie season where he was just unreal. But he's an above-average big league pitcher, and I think there's a reason he's still with the Rays. They value him still.
Yeah, no, I think he's so unfairly treated by Rays fans. They always want to DFA him or trade him or whatever, but he's, like you said, he's an above-average pitcher. He did, fall off a little bit this past season, but he's the real deal, and I think his curveball is going to be really, really good going forward. Last year he threw it more than he ever threw it in his entire life, and it's a pretty nice pitch. He's got some good metrics on it and stuff. So I'm excited to see him. I like that you would think he's going to bounce back, because I agree with that.
I think the frustration stems from the fact that every time he pitches, things aren't going well. First off, his pace when he's pitching is terrible. His game, if it's Yarbrough, if he's pitching, especially it's against the Red Sox, because those games are always 3.5 hours, you can expect to be in for a long night. And he looks like, when he's struggling, he looks like the least confident person on the planet. And so I think when you're watching him struggle, and there were some games where he got absolutely lit up last season, it's just this. You feel like the game's never going to end, and he's going to be on the mound for all 9 innings. But when he's good, he's great. There's not many guys that can generate that much soft contact in all of baseball. He's a left-handed Kyle Hendricks, and I'd say he might even be better than Kyle Hendricks. So I'd love to keep him around for at least this season. We'll see how it goes.
No, that sounds great. And I think on the pitching side of things, I'm excited for Colin Poche. I just wanted to throw that out there. He was so good until he got hurt, and he's going to come back and be incredible. I'm so excited for him. And even Jeffrey Springs, I feel like he was having a pretty underrated season. He was a very valuable piece before he went down. So lots of guys coming back that I'm excited for. But
that Springs injury was such a freak injury, falling on the knee, going to field a ball. It wasn't an arm injury. I have no concerns over Springs being able to come back and be a contributor again. Poche, you talk about that 92-mile-an-hour fastball that generates more whiffs than most fastballs across baseball. what an exciting pitcher to have back. And I think a lot of Rays fans forgot about those guys. You also got Jalen Beeks, who will be back at some point this season. There's a lot of exciting names that were on the shelf last year that should be contributors this year.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I'm excited for any players that the Rays are going to acquire. You know, they've got Kluber, they've got Brooks Raley. But is there any bat or arm that you would like the Rays to go after now too?
Yeah, I've got two. I think for the bats, Tommy Pham or Andrew McCutchen. I'd love to see one more right-handed bat. Tommy Pham, to get him back with the Rays. I think that at one point the Rays and Padres were talking about another trade that would have sent Pham back to the Rays. And so I think the Rays are definitely still interested in him. He's a good bounce back candidate. Andrew McCutchen, a guy that's still being a productive big leaguer, I would just love to see him as a Ray. He has been one of the probably most beloved major league players of the last 10 years. And so to see him join the Rays would just be a really fun guy to root for, a veteran presence in the locker room and the clubhouse, I should say. So why not make Andrew McCutchen a Ray? Pitching, I don't know. Any reliever they sign, I'll be on board with that. Like, obviously you heard Brooks Raley call them the mecca of pitching. So any guys they bring in, I trust them that they see something, that this guy's got stuff that if maybe just tinkered a little bit, could end up being a really, really solid pitcher.
Yeah, I was excited when they signed Stetson Alley last year. I thought they were going to figure him out finally, but unfortunately it didn't happen. I was looking at his Florida Complex League stats, and he just couldn't find the strike zone, but his 100-mile-an-hour fastball was pretty exciting. So, but yeah, I mean, they know what they want in pitchers. It's just a matter of, being able to get to the guy first, because, everybody is in on, these free agents with, interesting stuff that they can do, whether they spin the ball or they've got great movement on it, velocity, things like that, different arm slots. So, I'm on board with that. I trust their guys to go out and get the pitchers that they need.
I think for a long time, like the last probably 3 or 4 years, the Rays have really found a market inefficiency with pitchers, and specifically relievers, like you said, with that high spin that can do different things. I think the rest of the league is catching up, which was always going to happen. Now you just got to try to exploit that next market inefficiency to bring those guys in that maybe other teams aren't noticing yet.
Right. What do you think the next inefficiency might be that they're going to try to go after? If you had to guess.
I think they're going to go back to focusing on defense. And I think the confidence they have in Taylor Walls, the fact that they keep Kevin Kiermaier when they have Brett Phillips and Manuel Margot right behind him, which, like, in terms of for every other organization, that just seems like a completely irrational decision. You've got two guys that are also elite defensive center fielders, but you've got maybe the best defensive center fielder still on your team, so you keep him instead. I think they're going to really dig their heels in and try to solidify defense over the next few years. Defensive metrics, I think, are still so far behind the advancements we've seen with pitching and hitting metrics. So I think they're going to really try to find guys that can solidify the team defensively. And I think you're already starting to see them do that. You looked at, like, their drafts from the last couple of years. You're drafting guys like Alika Williams in the second round out of Arizona State, or I guess that was the first competitive balance round. A glove first guy that early in the draft. Carson Williams, I don't think his bat is like this, that's not the only reason why they drafted him. They're going after guys that can man a bunch of different positions. Look at Xavier Edwards, look at Vidal Brujan, look at Greg Jones, guys that are middle infielders but can maybe also play center. I think they're looking for these defensive jackknives that can just get put in, or Swiss Army knives, I should say, that can just get slotted in anywhere in the lineup and be an above-average defensive player.
Right, I definitely see that. It almost feels like they're going back to, like, not back, but I guess maybe like they're revisiting, like, just good, solid, athletic guys who can play baseball. They can put the bat on the ball, they can play wherever you ask them to, and they're going to do, a decent job at it. So it'll be interesting to see how they exploit that in the future, and then watching all the other teams catch up to them or try to catch up.
I mean, look at the Red Sox and Yankees. The Red Sox, on the left side of their infield, two great bats, Rafael Devers and Xander Bogaerts, but they're almost defensive liabilities over there. Like, they're not great defensive players. You have the Yankees, who have ignored defense for the better part of the last decade. They acquired Joey Gallo, and I'm like, oh, that's like, he is an amazing outfielder. And they wouldn't even play him in center. They continued to play Brett Gardner in center field. So I have no worries about the Yankees posing a threat to the Rays when they've got who's already an elite center fielder who wouldn't have that much ground to cover at Yankee Stadium, and they're still playing him in a corner outfield spot. Absolutely insane. So if the Rays, they already hit and pitch very well, and they play great defense, like, if you continue adding on to that defense, which has always been the most ignored aspect of the game, and base running. I'll also say base running. If you look at the Fangraphs base running metric, and there's like UBR as well, the Rays were at the top of baseball in that all year. And they weren't doing it by stealing bases. Their stolen base numbers were actually not that good. But taking extra bases, not grounding into double plays, things that, like, they do feel very, like you said, traditional, old school baseball, just like finding good athletes, finding guys that can take the extra base. The Rays are finding, I think, ways to quantify that. And they're going after those guys that are going to, help them win baseball games.
Yeah, that's so to kind of go off of the guys that you named as far as who we drafted. The next question I got here is who is the prospect that you're most excited for?
I'm going to go ahead and disqualify Shane Baz from this list because I think he is maybe one of the most exciting prospects in all of baseball. But we've seen him make his big league debut. Obviously, you could go further down the line with some of these big international signings like Carlos Colmenares. I really like Nico Holsizer, and
oh yeah,
it's just the power bat, right? It's exciting when you see guys like that mashing in the minor leagues. I've been following his minor league career for a little bit now. I don't know if that bat's going to play even in Double A or Triple A next year. I don't know if he'll ever be a big leaguer. You look at his strikeout rate; the guy strikes out a lot, but when he makes contact, it goes a long way. So I wouldn't say I'm most excited about him, but he's a guy that, like, I check the box scores every morning to see how he did. I am most curious about Vidal Brujan. What's his role with the team? We saw him struggle when he came up, but honestly, is that any fault of his own? He never had the consistent playing time. His spot was kind of just as like a 26th man on the roster. So I've always thought they're going to move him to center field, but they still have Kevin Kiermaier. They still have Brett Phillips, and they still have Manuel Margot. So if you're picking center fielders, he's at least fourth, but he's probably still behind Josh Lowe on that depth chart as well. So I'm kind of just curious how they're going to use him this year. And these things usually work themselves out. There will be injuries. There will be trades. He will fit in whether it's here or somewhere else. But I am curious how they're going to use him in 2022.
Holsizer's an interesting name. I noticed him earlier this season, or actually when he was traded. They got him for Adam Kolarek, I believe, from the Dodgers a little while ago. He came over. He was like a little injured, whatever, not playing great, but like you said, that power is real. He's the real deal. If he can, make better contact, it could be pretty exciting. I wrote like a little thing for Raise the Roof about him, and it was like digging into his stuff, like his rise in the minor leagues. He kind of fell off a little bit at the end of last season, but I think he might start this season in AAA, maybe. It just depends. The Rays have so much depth, but he could be really interesting either next year or 2023, or maybe never if he doesn't crack a major league roster because his strikeout rate is just so high. So he can play defense a little bit. He's got a lot of power, like you said, so he could be pretty exciting someday.
Yeah, he's a guy that, like, I'm willing to take a gamble on, right? Like, I'm not putting all my chips in saying this is going to be the guy, because you look, like, even at high A last year, in 180 plate appearances, had a 38.9 strikeout rate, like the strikeout percentage.
Right.
So this guy strikes out a ton, and he was probably a little bit old for that league as well. So it's a little worrying, but just keep an eye on him this year. If those strikeouts get down to even like 30% at the Double A or Triple A level, I think this guy has some promise because, like we said, the power is incredible.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of that guy for the Reds like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, like Aristides Aquino or something like that.
Yeah,
just a massive dude with insane power. Pretty old, for his league, but yeah, I'm interested to see if he can do something in the future. So we're going to break up the questions here real quick. I don't have a smooth segue for this, but remember, go to our RBLR sports shop here. We've got, our T-shirts with all the cool designs. We're talking about baseball. We got baseball shirts. You guys like baseball. You're listening right now. So that's shop.rblrsports.com. You can use our promo code FLAPPY, which I will spell correctly, FLAPPY, for 10% off your order. Think of this as like an impromptu ad read here. So if any companies are listening, you like how I'm doing this right now, you don't like how I'm doing it, tell me. We can, work something out. Just give us some money and we'll, figure it out a bit. Just got to try to fit this in here the best I can. But I know I would get a shirt if I had money, but, I'm a school teacher, so I don't. But if you do have money and you're not a teacher, you could buy a shirt. So yeah, anything else we got to add on that plug? I think we're good.
I think that was perfect, Ben.
Another really poor segue here, but we'll get back into the questions. Who is your favorite Rays player currently, and then who is your favorite Rays player of all time?
So yeah, I think Taylor Wall's currently all time. I don't know. I go back and forth. I think BJ Upton is a guy that was just electric watching him play. He got a lot of unnecessary hate, I think, for his time with the Rays. But it's got to be Ben Zobrist. Like, who embodies being a Ray more than Ben Zobrist? I think anybody does. You're talking about a guy that played above average defense at like 8 different positions, probably 7 different positions. I don't think he ever caught with the Rays. But it was, at one point, probably should have been an American League MVP. He led the AL in WAR, I believe it was in 2011. I could be wrong there. And didn't get. I think if in today's game, he probably gets a lot more respect than he did when he was in his prime. And then to watch him go on and like have that success with Kansas City and with Chicago was really fun to watch. I wish he had won the big one while he was with the Rays. But hey, he was there for those glory years as well.
That's true. He really did everything. Like, he was a good base runner, a good hitter. He could hit for average, power, hit from both sides of the plate, played defense everywhere. That's a good favorite Ray, I think. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. That's I wasn't picturing Zobrist being someone's favorite Ray, but the way you explained it was exactly, it made a very good point. So yeah, I guess to jump into the next question then is, so since Zobrist is your favorite Ray, who is your favorite non-Ray?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, this is a cop-out answer, but I watch almost every Rays game throughout the season, and then when I'm getting ready for bed and I need to turn on a West Coast game, if they're playing at 10 Eastern, I'm going to put the Angels game on, and I'm going to watch Mike Trout. And that might not even be the most popular answer anymore because his teammate Shohei Ohtani is just as good, like he was this year. And so Mike Trout missing almost all of this season really put a damper on my baseball consumption. I would still tune in and watch Shohei whenever he was playing because he was just incredible. But it's Mike Trout because I don't think we've ever seen a player like this in the big leagues since like prime A-Rod or prime Barry Bonds. So, yeah, he's the guy I tune in when he's up to bat. I stop what I'm doing. It's got to be Mike Trout. Like, there's no other pitcher or player in baseball. If I pick the pitcher, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I can think of anybody that gets me excited, that excited that's not on the Rays, not named Mike Trout.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a future Hall of Famer. He's, you can see it already, and he does everything. I hope he could stay healthy this season. I'm sure he hopes that too because he wants to play. But he's so fun to watch. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday, and it's going to be cool to be able to tell our kids we saw Mike Trout play, and he was one of the best players ever.
Yeah, I've seen him hit 3 home runs at the Trop, and every time the ball just comes off his bat, it's a sound that cannot be recreated. He is the man. I will root for him and his team to get back into the postseason so we can see him go on a true postseason run. I just hope it's in a year that the Rays aren't in contention.
I was gonna say it's like without sending too much praise his way, because obviously like Babe Ruth is one of the greatest players to ever play the game ever. But like I feel like he is our current day kind of Babe Ruth, like just clear cut best player in all of baseball. Just like one of the biggest names. Like everyone who watches baseball knows who Mike Trout is.
Yeah, you put his numbers up against Ruth, Mantle, Mays. Ruth is a little bit different because he was dominating his league that like in the likes that no one had ever seen before. But like Mays and Mantle, if you're going to compare him to center fielders, he is right up there. Ken Griffey Jr. He's not putting up Bonds like numbers offensively, but I mean, if you look at like era adjusted and park adjusted numbers, yeah, he's up there as well too. So he is the best player of our generation. And maybe the second player of our generation is also on his team. I think he's going to need to do what he did for a couple more years, which is hard to ask of anybody. But Shohei Ohtani is just as exciting to watch.
Yeah, I agree for sure. He's my favorite non-Ray player. So,
so next question we got here. What's a hill that you die on? Something that's Rays related. Definitely.
The Trop is not that bad. It
Thank
definitely,
you. Yes.
I would love to see the Rays in the new stadium, and I've only ever been to two other big league parks. I've been to Kauffman in Kansas City, and then this past season I was at Target Field in Minnesota, and those are both incredible. And those are both ballparks that I'd pick to watch a game in over the Trop, as long as the weather's permitting, because you can get some bad weather in both of those cities. But the Trop is not that bad, and I give the credit to Stuart Sternberg for the work that they put in since his ownership group came in at 2005 to do as much as they can with that stadium. Yes, it doesn't compare to maybe 29 of the other or 28 of the other stadiums. I think it's probably still better than Oakland, but they've tried to put as much lipstick on that pig as they can. And they put a lot of money into concessions, into the lighting, into the presentation, into the turf. We went through a time from like 2016 to 2019 that they changed the turf every year. When before that, the turf hadn't been changed in like 10 years. And it looked really bad. Go watch some game footage from like 2011, 2012. Look how bad that turf looks compared to what it looks like now. It was really bad. It was blotchy. It was like a weird color. It looked terrible. And they've put a lot of money in to make sure that the stadium looks great. You look at the LED lights they added a few years ago that you can do for the national anthem and for home run celebrations and for postgame. It looks a lot better. And whatever stadium they build, and I know right now the talk is open air in Ybor, whether it be for a half season or a full season, I will be less likely to go to games if it's an open air stadium. I'll go to games from months of like April, the beginning of the season, and then maybe I'll go in late September when it starts to cool down again. In postseason games, like I'm not going to sit for 9 innings in an outdoor stadium from the months of May to August. I'm not doing that for 9 innings.
It'd be insane.
It would be terrible in the state of Florida. Yeah, give me a roof. I always want a roof. I want controlled climate. Find some ways to get sunlight in. I know it's going to cost money, but yeah, unless I'm sitting in a covered seating area, you will not see me at the new stadium in like June.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And kind of to play off of that, you kind of touched on it. But what is an ideal solution for you in order to have the next stadium or location perfect?
I think in Hillsborough County is a better option than Pinellas County. And I love St. Pete. I go over there all the time for race games and Rowdies games. But I think in terms of getting more people there on a nightly basis, not on the weekends, that's easy to go on a Saturday or Sunday, but on a Tuesday night on a 7 o'clock first pitch, it's probably got to be in Hillsborough County. You've got more businesses there that will buy corporate season tickets. You've got people that can come in off I-4 and up and down 75 without having to mess with the mess that is 275. And it might not fix the attendance. I don't think we're going to be shoot to the top 10 in baseball in attendance, maybe for that first year of a new stadium. We might still have low attendances, but I think it would be enough to keep the team afloat. And the biggest thing is, like, walk-up sales, the Rays don't do that badly. It's the corporate season tickets that fill up a lot of stadiums that the Rays are lacking in. And getting the team into Hillsborough County, whether that be in Ybor or maybe the fairgrounds, I don't know. They've thrown out a ton of different locations. I think it would end up being better. But like I said, give me a roof because I'm not going outside.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Like, I feel like in Florida, it has to be a closed stadium.
I don't even want a retractable. Like, if they build a retractable stadium or a stadium with a retractable roof, fine. But that's going to add like $250 million to the cost. You need the land area and you need to like build it. How many days of the season is that roof going to be open? Because there's either going to be a chance of rain or it's going to be incredibly hot. So is it worth however much money it's going to cost to bring it in? Now, if they're going to be sharing that stadium with the Rowdies, I'm a little worried because I don't necessarily love the idea of the Rowdies playing on turf if there is a roof. I love the stadium that they have at Al Lang. It's one of I think, the most picturesque soccer stadiums in the country. But if they end up having to share eventually with the Rays, it's better than some of the alternatives that other lower league soccer teams are experiencing. I know this is supposed to be the Rays podcast today, but I have Rowdies opinions too.
Oh, you're all good, brother.
But I do have worries about that. And again, maybe I'm being a little ignorant here. I still think the most likely outcome here is the Rays get a stadium for a full season in Hillsborough County. I think a lot of this is politicking. I don't think that Sternberg and Ald and the rest of the Rays brass are unserious about the Sister City plan, but I do think a big chunk of it has to be for leveraging, and I think in the end, they'll win. It's going to get uglier before it gets better. These things don't happen when there's time left on the clock. If you want examples of that, look in the 90s when Tampa St. Pete was originally trying to get a major league franchise here. Look at what happened in San Francisco. Look at what happened in Chicago when their city councilman literally took the clock off the wall and turned it back 10 minutes so they had more time to negotiate a stadium deal. Eventually, I think it'll get done. And I don't know. Maybe that's wishful thinking. Maybe that's ignorance. I don't know, but I still think that's a more likely outcome than a split city or a full relocation.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. I think the Trop it's honestly it's charming. Like, I like it. It's cool to be there. It's not. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad stadium, but it's not a great stadium. But it's our not great stadium. So like, only we're allowed to say that stuff as Rays fans. So when other fans come in and want to say whatever about the Trop, like, no, you can't say bad things about it. Just us. Like, only we can say bad stuff. But we like it. I don't know any Rays fan that genuinely hates it. Like, it's cool. It's a unique experience.
I grew up there, so it's a little like there's that bit of nostalgia where it's like, okay, I just love. I grew up here, so I like going there. Yes, I think a new stadium would be better, and I think there's probably the large majority of stadiums in Major League Baseball are better than the Trop. That doesn't make it. It's not a bad place to watch a baseball game. Maybe when you compare it to some of these other places, but yeah, like you said, people that have never been there before, most of them that go, they're like, oh, this isn't as bad as people said. It's got good sight lines. It's cool. And in recent years, the concessions have gotten a lot better. I think they've done a lot of great work to it. And yeah, it's not a bad place to watch a baseball game.
So another little bit of a hot take, a little bit more hotter than liking the Trop is I listened to, I was doing my homework. I listened to some Raise Your Voice podcast, make sure I know, basically, I was doing my research, and I listened to your episode with Darby Robinson, who, by the way, is a really great follow on Twitter. You guys talked about Hall of Fame voting, and you guys talked about Kevin Kiermaier a little bit. That was pretty cool. I know that it was not the most well-received idea, but what are your thoughts on, that it could possibly maybe be something that might happen? A lot of things would have to go right. Yeah.
Well, Ben, I applaud your courage for setting the Rays online universe aflame earlier this offseason, starting the campaign to put Kevin Kiermaier in the Hall of Fame. It's something that I'm all on board with. I don't think it's likely, but the one thing I'll say, and we talked about it in that episode with Darby, who, like you said, is a great Twitter follow. Go follow him. He is the best defensive center fielder of his generation, and it's not by a little bit either. Like, yeah, Mike Trout at one point was really great, but was he ever better than Kiermaier defensively? I don't think so.
No, never.
No. And is there a place in the Hall of Fame for someone who is that good at what he did for that long? I mean, look who else is in the Hall of Fame. Look who was the first unanimous selection to the Hall of Fame. Mariano Rivera. That guy pitched 1 inning a game. He was the best at it for a long time. I'm not saying that he's not a Hall of Famer. But I'm saying if we've got room in the Hall of Fame, so for someone unanimously to be selected that pitched 1 inning a game, should there be room for someone that does something as important as defense and center field for as well as Kiermaier has done for as long as he's done it for? Now, he would probably have to keep it up for a number of different years, but maybe we're undervaluing defense here. Like, I think there's kickers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, right? Like, there's not many, but there's a few kickers, but they weren't the most valuable players on their team. They weren't the most valuable players in the league, but they were the best at what they did for a very long time. And if Kevin Kiermaier can keep up his defensive outfield numbers, and I know that's a lot to ask because he's going to be like 32 this year. Usually that's when players start to really decline, especially defensively. But if he can keep it up, I don't know. Why shouldn't he be a Hall of Famer? Like, someone should have to tell me why he's not a Hall of Famer if he remains that good at what he does for that long. And the bat has been average, like league average. And when I say average, I think that's a word that people don't like to hear. Being average, like if you have 26 average big league players on your roster, you're probably going to the postseason. He's been an average bat his entire career and an elite defender, the best defensive center fielder in all of baseball. So, yeah, I don't know. Why shouldn't he be a Hall of Famer?
That's what I'm saying. Like, if he literally does like a carbon copy of his first, 7 years or whatever, where, he has his ups and downs, he still plays great defense, he's a league average hitter. If he does that, he's like on pace in terms of like his Baseball Reference WAR total. So I think a couple things would have to happen. Like, I think he would have to be on a World Series winning team. I think that might help his case. He'll definitely have to stay healthy. And Andrew Jones getting into the Hall of Fame would probably help Kiermaier in a way, just because, like, he wasn't a defense first player, but he was a good defender. And, getting that kind of player into the Hall might kind of maybe loosen up the voters a bit. I don't know. But it's not completely crazy to think about him being there someday. It's just, a lot of things will have to go right. But I appreciate you guys giving it some kind of discussion, because it's worth talking about. And I think, if he puts up maybe like a 4 or 5 WAR season, which isn't completely unrealistic this year, I mean, assuming we have a season, I think people are going to start to be like, oh, wait, maybe he's, if he plays 5-6 more years and he does half of this, he could make a case for himself.
Do you guys
I think he can get onto the ballot?
Yeah, I definitely think he'll be on the ballot, especially if he plays for another 5-6 years at this level. Do you guys think he's still like the best option for center field with the Rays? Because I think he's still better than Phillips. He's better than Marco, and he gets a lot of hate for maybe the things he says. I know we had that thing with like Randy Rosarena that was a whole lot of nothing. But you look at like still what he did. Go back to the ALDS. Games 3 and 4, he was the best player on the field for both teams. He had the big hit at the end of Game 3. Game 4 was maybe his best career game with the Rays. You look at that play he made to throw out Alex Verdugo at third base. It was overshadowed by how the game ended, and maybe there's still a chance that was the last game for him in a Rays uniform. But if that was, what a way to go out for Kevin Kiermaier. He was incredible in the postseason.
It's pretty much like sums up his career. Like, if a couple more things can go right for him, being that, elite player that, he is in my brain right now, isn't such a crazy, concept. So, I'm excited to, see him stay healthy. And I will mention this, he was, based on Baseball Savant's like sprint speed thing, he was the fastest player on the team last season at 29.2 feet per second. He was 32, or no, he's 31. He's going to turn 32 soon. And Ichiro Suzuki at 45 years old had a 27.4 feet per second sprint speed at 45 years old in 2018. Rajai Davis at 37 years old was at 29.6 feet per second. So like speed doesn't fall off as much as people think it does. Like, he's never going to be like a 30, feet per second guy again, but he's still going to be a good runner. And at, center field with his instincts and his arm, I don't think the drop off is going to be as intense as people think. So, I found that stuff the other day and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. It makes me feel good about myself. So just wanted to put that out there.
So
as long as he stays healthy, and that's the big question,
yes,
right?
Can
he
that's
stay
a key.
healthy?
Yeah.
He's been healthy though. I'll give him credit. Like these last 2 years,
yeah,
he's
3
been
years,
incredibly healthy. And if he does it again this year, I mean, again, I don't know. Maybe there's even another extension in there with the Rays. I doubt it. Given the money he's going to be, if he stays healthy, scheduled to make, but they owe him $12.5 this year. It's a $2.5 million buyout for 23. Maybe they decide to keep him on for another year. Now, there's a chance we record this, and as soon as the lockout's lifted, he's traded to the Cubs, right? But I'm not against the idea of keeping Kevin Kiermaier for as long as he's producing at this level.
See, I'm on a little bit of a different page than that. I feel that we have now is our best chance to trade him.
And you might be right.
I think that we have the best, like, none of them are as good as him defensively. Like, not even a comparison. I'm not trying to say that Brett Phillips or Margot or Lowe when he comes in are ever going to be as good as him defensively. But I think that what they bring offensively is almost enough to kind of counteract it.
Phillips, I think, is going to be due for a lot of regression offensively. I think you look at a lot of his numbers, and he popped out some home runs last year. Not a discredit to Phillips. I think he's a great player, too, and I think he would be a starting center fielder for a lot of big league clubs. And the fact that he was a lot of times the last man on the Rays bench, I think is says more about the Rays than it does about Phillips.
Yeah.
And maybe it is the right. I mean, I think the right time to trade him would have been a few years ago. But like we said, nobody values Kevin Kiermaier as much as the Rays do.
Yeah.
And while it might be a rational decision for most teams to move on from a guy when you've got not only Phillips and Margot, but Josh Lowe, Vidal Brujan right behind him that can play outfield in the big leagues, the Rays still, their goal isn't to get the most value. The goal is to be the best team. And I think Kevin Kiermaier starting in center field for you right now, still in this moment, makes you the best possible team given the players you have.
I love to hear it. That was a great soundbite. Let's put that on something. Let's put it on a shirt. You know those shirts I talked about earlier? Let's get a shirt for that.
I will be the first to buy one if you guys get that on a shirt.
No, you'd be the second to buy one. I think I would get first dibs on that. No, it's your soundbite. You can have the first one. So, Brett, do you have any questions for us as we wrap this up here? Anything you wanted to mention or?
How hard is it to keep up with all four of these teams in the Tampa Bay area? Because I have great respect for what you guys are doing at RBLR.
I think that would be a question more for Eureka, because I know Ben and I are pretty much we just focus on the Rays on our end, but I know that Eureka, our producer, is very involved with all four of our podcasts, and I feel like it kind of helps that we all have all of us that host the specific episodes or the specific teams. We all kind of just work together with our group and make it manageable for him.
Yeah, I mean, he does a great job, like, producing, and I'm sure he's, getting all teary-eyed in the background here. He does a great job producing, getting us all together, scheduling things, keeping us in line. Yeah, he's just kind of like the puppet master here. So he does some great work. He just puts us in positions where we can succeed, and he'll, back
just like
us.
Kevin Cash, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's not out there trying to do too much. He just puts us in positions where, we can be successful and play to our strengths and all that. Yeah, it's been pretty cool though. I'm really happy to be on this, and I might hop on like a Rowdies episode sometime soon. Who knows? But it's cool that we've got a couple of guys who can touch all these different topics and all that. So
Yeah, definitely.
So, Brett, you are definitely invited to come and talk on the Rowdies podcast whenever. They're always looking for guests. You're always welcome back here, obviously, because baseball stuff, and it's been great talking to you so far. Anything you want to plug, like your Twitter, D-Rays based stuff, anything like that, go for it.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at BGRutherford99. I tweet a lot about mostly Rays stuff, but I throw out soccer stuff as well. So if you're not the biggest soccer fan, I don't know, you can mute me or not follow me at all. But if you want to look for our podcast, you go to draysbay.com. We have articles with all of our podcast episodes that we put out, or just search on your podcast provider D-Rays Bay. All of our podcasts, including Raise Your Voice, Who's on Worst, which is hosted by Darby Robinson and Ashley McLennan, where we review bad baseball movies. I produced that show. It's all on the same podcast feed. It's on. If you search D-Rays Bay on your podcast provider, you should find us. Who's on Worst is, I don't know, one of the more favorite things. It's my favorite show to work on. I love Raise Your Voice, obviously, but talking with Darby and Ashley as we commiserate through, we did like Air Bud's 7th inning fetch. We did Rookie of the Year, which I didn't think was that bad. Fever Pitch, which also wasn't that bad. We also did like Trouble with the Curve, which was just terrible. It's really fun. It's movies that maybe from your childhood, maybe movies that you've never seen before. There should be a new episode coming out of that very soon, and probably some more throughout the off season. But just search D-Rays Bay on your podcast provider, and you can find us.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you, everybody who's listening right now. If you're still listening, we appreciate it. You know that liking and subscribing to our social media stuff, our podcast stuff, all that stuff is really important, and it's free and it's great. We love it. And I would give you a hug for that. But if you'd like to support us even more, you can head over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all of our designs we've cooked up for some cool shirts. They're in all the colors of our teams. So we've got Rays, Bucks, Lightning, Rowdies, all that stuff. You can use promo code FLAPPY, like I said before when I spelled it correctly, FLAPPY for 10% off your order. And the link will be in the description as always. So thank you all so much for listening. Any final thoughts here, Zach, other than the thing we're getting in the Google Doc right now?
No, not necessarily. No, I think we pretty much covered it all. Also, I know it's not baseball, but welcome Mr. Todd Haley to Tampa with the Tampa Bay Bandits. Our newest little sports team that's going to be coming up. So maybe there'll be a podcast on that soon too.
Yeah, we're going to have to add an extra letter. So we might have to change. Our social media handle right now is at RBLR Sports, but we might have to throw another B in there for the Bandits.
RB squared LR.
Maybe BRBLR, Brebler Sports.
Brebler Sports.
We'll work on that. If you have any ideas, feel free to interact with us on social media, politely, as always.
We don't want that getting
thank you all.
Again.
Yeah, don't need that. But thank you all for listening, and go Rays.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.